Jim, do you have anything before we introduce our speaker?
Nothing specific unless they have any questions.
All righty. Okay, our speaker today is Dr. Gary Fogle. Now, he's has his doctorate is in biology, but he is also a world-class remote aircraft pilot. And he's going to be talking to us about that. But he's the CEO of Natural Selection Incorporated, a computer science company in Sorrento Mesa. He's also passionate about the history of gliding in California, especially San Diego. He has authored several books and articles on this topic. And Gary and his father, Larry Fogle, were instrumental in preserving the Torrey Pines Glider Port as an historic site. Gary also enjoys flying RC model sailplanes and has several national and world records. And he is a fellow, leader member, and contest director of the Academy of Model Aeronautics. When he isn't busy with research or model airplanes, he also teaches a popular introductory course in aerospace engineering at San Diego State University in the fall. His February lecture, Wind to Wings, The History of Gliding in San Diego, will focus on San Diego's role in the development of the sport of soaring in the 1920s and 30s. Dr. Fogle.
Limbo exercises here. We can do a contest later on. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come today. I appreciate that. Got a little bit of a technical issue with the AV, but hopefully we can work it through. And I'll take a little bit of time to talk about some slides and then show you some show and tell with the aircraft here. Hopefully I can get this to work. Just a second. Okay, so model airplanes, of course, have had a long history in American aviation all the way back to the Wright brothers, even before that. And the history of recreational model airplanes also has its own long history. People have been setting world records of the Fédération Internationale Aéronautique Internationale for a long time in model airplanes, specifically Maynard Hill. Many of you might remember Maynard Hill from the 1950s through the 1990s, setting amazing records with model airplanes, even to the point of trying to beat the Russians with altitude for model airplanes by sitting in a Navy turret with binoculars to watch the plane as it goes higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. There are now rules that allow only visual line of sight for record flying, not through binoculars or any of those kind of devices. But when Maynard was doing these things, that was okay. So we were still beating the Russians. But these were, national news when someone would break a world record back then. It was a really important achievement for America and for the Academy of Model Aeronautics. So the Academy of Model Aeronautics in Muncie, Indiana has several purposes, but one purpose is to be the national body for model aviation and the one that sanctions all the competitions for model aircraft in America. There's about 2,000 of those sanctions a year for different types of competition, and they certify the official model flying records on a national and international basis. So that the the NAA provides AMA with the opportunity to, like it's cutting in now.
Watch your buttons.
Yep, thank you. The NAA provides AMA with the opportunity to certify records in American airspace, and the AMA is then recognized as a member of the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale, which is the international body that does world records. So there's a lot of oversight in these things, and there's different types of competition for aero models. Many of you are probably familiar with the standard competitions, where you go out on a Sunday and you compete with your friends to see who's best, or in some particular fashion. You require a contest director and a sanction from the Academy of Model Aeronautics to do those kinds of things. There's different sizes of contests, from very, very small, 10 people, to very regional, like all of Western America. That's kind of size contest. And the Academy of Model Aeronautics redefines these categories as technology changes to have new contests and new fun things for modelers. And typically then a winner is declared on the field because they're the best in that particular category. There's a different type of competition, and that's the type I'll talk about today, which is this record competition. So these are competitions ongoing all the time to see who's best in a particular category of flight. And it still requires a contest director to come along with you. It requires a sanction for that kind of an event, but it's really an individual performance. There are team categories too. But it's you going out to see how far you can fly, and is that flight going to be further than anyone else has ever done? And there's lots of categories and records. They typically last years, so it might be for speed in a particular event, and then that's just going to keep as a category for a long time. so that modelers can then keep building and designing better and better aircraft to try to improve the performance. So as long as that category exists, the competition itself kind of never ends. Yeah.
Can you try this one?
Sure, not a problem.
Hey, Gary?
Yes.
Your voice is plenty loud to carry.
I can do that if you'd like. Can you hear me in the back? Don't need the microphone. I'll just keep. Thank you. We'll get through the technical stuff. I promise. Okay, so there's different types of records. So I just talked about records as a category. There's different types. There's the world records that are certified by the FAI in Switzerland. Just like the manned aircraft, we have model aircraft records that are FAI records. And they can be established by any pilot in the world. Then there's NAA records, which are the best achievement of an American in one of those FAI categories. And then there are other types of records that are just within the Academy of Model Aeronautics. They have their own types of records. They might not be the same categories that the FAI has, might be specific to the AMA needs. And those are the best achievement by an AMA member in that particular type of category. So 3 different types of records you could go for if you're interested. So the world records for FAI have definitions, just like the manned aircraft. If you want to fly a solar-powered aircraft around the world as a manned aircraft, there's the same kind of regulations about what does solar power mean and how many cells can you have and all that kind of weight restrictions. All those kind of things also apply to model aircraft. They can only be established during FAI events. You have to hold an FAI event in order to set a record, which is a little bit of a cost. And also you have to have your friends come along. One of them has to be a contest director, and you have to have witnesses following you to watch what you're doing. They're going to certify at the end that you did what you did. And again, in the US, the National Air Sport Control is the AMA, and it does that role on behalf of the NAA. And AMA and NAA have had this relationship for a very long time. It goes back to the foundations of NAA, when AMA had its offices within the NAA building back in 1936 at the formation of the Academy of Model Aeronautics. So this synergy is very, very old. But it wasn't until 1966 that AMA became fully independent of NAA, and then NAA kind of gifted AMA with this responsibility about model airplane records for America. There's a whole listing of different international record categories. You can spend a lot of time looking at that going, I wonder if I could do that, I wonder if I could do that, I wonder if I could, if I was gonna do that, what would I want to build a plane like? It's a lot of fun. It's just thinking, right? It's all good stuff. So what do you have to do in order to set a world record? And this is a checklist, right? This is we're gonna go break some world record, what are we gonna do? The first thing is you have to go through that listing and say, I want to set a record in electric powered aircraft for goal and return distance. So let's say we're gonna specify ahead of time in writing before we launch where we're gonna go, and then we launch, go to that place and come back and have to land within 300 meters of your starting point. That's a type of category. Let's just say we chose that. I then have to go build a plane like this one. And it might cost $1,000, more than that. Don't tell my wife. How much does it cost? So you build it in your garage when she's not watching. And then you have to become an AMA member. You have to also get a sporting license from the FAI. And then you have to get a sanction to have a world record trial. That's another cost. That can be as an individual or a team. Then you have to have at least 2 witnesses that are AMA members and 1 contest director that's an AMA member come along with you. They have to be really good friends to want to do this with you. Then you have to tell AMA ahead of time, we're going to go out to the middle of nowhere to go set a record. Then you have to go do that. It's gas at $4 a gallon. It's food. It's lodging to go to wherever you're going to go to do this craziness. Then you have to have success. Maybe you don't have success. You did all this work for no reason, right? It's fun, but the success is not guaranteed. And then once let's say you are successful, you have to notify the Academy of Model Aeronautics as soon as you get back. The first business day, you have to say, we did it. This is what we did as a preliminary claim. That goes to the FAI. And then you have to develop this dossier. And the dossier is a record of what you did as the record. It's a paperwork process. And the paperwork process takes typically way longer than flying a record. I'll show you a picture from it. It's literally take this table and it's page after page after page of signatures along this kind of length of a table to then submit the paperwork. Crazy stuff. And then AMA reviews that paperwork and says, yes, you did it. And then that goes to the NAA and they say, yes, AMA approved it. And then it goes to Switzerland and then they say, finally, yes, you got a world record. And then you get your nice certificates in the mail saying you did all this work. Long process, but a lot of fun. So that's the record. This is the paperwork for one record on a business table in my office with my friend John helping sign things. So you get a sense of it's in triplicate too. You have to sign everything in triplicate. Wow. It's like legalese. It's terrible stuff. Okay. There's 2 types of national records. Again, it's the NAA records in the best performance in an FAI category will get you one of these certificates, Or if you're not competing in FAI category, but you are competing in a category of the model AMA, that is also a different type of record category. The AMA records are far easier to do paperwork-wise. It's not as big a deal. There's different record trials. There's all sorts of different rules about how you would set a record. There's different age characteristics. So you can be a junior is age under 19, senior is up to 21, I think it is, and then open or adult is after 21. So depending on your age or the time of the record, you get a different category. And there's 4 major categories: speed, duration, distance, and altitude for AMA. You can establish that by having a record trial or at a contest where you just happen to perform really, really, really well, better than anyone else has in that category in America. You can still get a record for that, or at a world championships. And if you're creative, sometimes you can combine these categories. So for instance, they talked about the goal and return category. So we're going to launch somewhere, we're going to go to a specific point and then fly back again. Another type of record called altitude says you launch at one position, you go up as high as you can, you have to land 300 meters from where you took off. So one can think of combining those two. So you could go on your go and return flight to a specific point. On the way back, you can fly as high as you can and then land at the same place. You get 2 records with 1 flight. Right? So you can try to be creative and combine these things. I think the most you can do is 3 records for 1 flight. It's pretty fun. So this is an easier process. Here's our checklist for the AMA records. We have to go identify a category we want to, build a plane. We have to be AMA members, get a sanction, have a witness. But the requirement's only 1 witness and a contest director versus 2 witnesses and a contest director for a world record. Again, go out, have fun, hopefully have success, notify, and then AMA within 14 days, you have to submit your paperwork, and they're very quick about saying, thanks, you got a record. It's not this month-long, huge process. Still a lot of fun. Okay. I'm not going to worry about this one. There are particular categories of model aircraft that don't yet have record opportunities. The technology keeps changing, and people haven't caught up to say maybe we should have a particular record category in this particular section. So for instance, maybe it doesn't even make sense to have a record category in something called RC scale aerobatics, which is I'm going to fly a powered aircraft and do rolls and loops to make it look as close to a real plane as possible. I don't know how you could get a record in that. It doesn't make sense to have a record in that. It's not altitude or distance, right? Or helicopters. Actually, although there's very, very much interest in RC helicopters, there's no national records for RC helicopters. There are international ones, and I'll talk about that coming up at the end. Others have lots and lots and lots of types of records. So indoor free flight models, rubber band powered free flight models, have a tremendous diversity of different types of record categories for the type and size of the plane, for the ceiling height of the room you're flying in, all sorts of different types of things. Is it a glider? Is it a catapult glider? Is it a pusher? Is it a puller? All sorts of things. So a tremendous number in that particular if you're interested. Some categories are so new there's no records at all. So things like drone racing, I don't know if you've seen this with the little quadcopters and they go whizzing as fast as possible around a course. There's no records for that, although certainly one could think about proposing a speed record for those things. No one has proposed that yet, so there's no records you can get.
You use VR.
You can use the FPV, exactly. So we could have that as a category, but just no one's proposed it yet. Also things like control line combat. This is a type of model airplane where, if you're familiar with control line, you have the model airplane on a string and you go around in circles. And with control line combat, you have 2 guys with circles and they're trying to hit each other in the air to knock each other out of the sky, or knock the other opponent out of the sky, not each other. I don't know how you'd have a record, maybe number of kills or something. It's a different kind of record, right? But now I want to focus in on RC soaring. So there are particular categories that have both AMA and FAI categories of record performance. RC soaring is one of them, rate control soaring. And there's lots of restrictions on either the size of the aircraft, the weight of the aircraft, all sorts of things. For the Academy of Model Aeronautics, there's 4 different classes, A, B, C, and D, based on increasing wingspan. So Class A is small, 60-inch wingspan, up to Class D, like this one I have on the table. It's unlimited wingspan. And each of those has different record types. So, for instance, this is a type of Class A size sailplane, 60-inch wingspan, 1.5 meter wingspan. This is a very interesting type of event, and unfortunately I didn't bring one of these models, maybe next time. But this is called discus launch gliding. And this is a sport that was invented or started here in San Diego 26 years ago. It used to be grenade launch gliding, so we used to throw them like a javelin style. But the technology has evolved to hold the glider by the wingtip with a little peg. And the idea for launching is you basically take the plane, you spin like a discus athlete, and throw the plane up. It goes up to about 150, 200 feet. And from there you do different contests in terms of thermaling to stay up for particular types of duration. Those particular types of duration, you might have a contest, let's say 5 2-minute flights in a 10-minute window, which means you want to minimize the time you're on the ground. So in order to minimize the time you're on the ground, the best pilots, they have the plane come right back to them, they catch it by the wingtip, they already spin and throw it to launch under a second. So you're minimizing your time on the ground. In 2 weeks, we have an international contest in Poway at the field where this sport kind of started. People fly from all around the world. We'll have about 65 participants. Last year there were 80. Roughly a quarter of that field is pilots who have flown for their nation in the World Championships. So it's the top of the line piloting. It's a lot of fun. So again, planes in RC soaring can go from very small to very large, and you can still set all those different records in those different types of categories. Everything from duration on a slope, on ridge soaring, duration thermaling, declaring your distance, straight line where you're going to go to when you have to go there. Open distance, you can go in any direction for as far as you want. Goal and return, like I had mentioned before. Closed course, which is on a slope, going back and forth between 100-meter poles. And your best friends are flagging your flight for all day long. You're really good friends. Altitude is how high, and speed is how fast over a particular course. So for RC soaring, you have all those different categories for all those different sizes. It's a lot of different record types. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about these two planes. This plane in particular is a plane called the SBXC. It was designed in the 1980s to 1990s or so. And it has an aspect ratio of about 20-to-1 on the wingspan. Weighs about 10 pounds roughly when it's flying. This is a picture of me holding it in California Valley, which is in Central California. So in order to do these kinds of records, we're clearly not going to do them in San Diego. It's too crowded, the airspace is just too much. We go to remote places where we can go high and go far. And the rules say that if you're going to go do records, you have to keep it in visual line of sight at all times. So it makes it difficult if you're going to want to go for distance, because you could stand here and fly the plane, but you're not going to fly it very far before you will start losing visual line of sight. So the idea is you have to hop in your friend's car and you start driving along with the plane, right? So we have, and I'll show you some pictures, we have outfitted a special Ford F-150 pickup truck with 2 seats in the back that are welded to the frame with a plexiglass windscreen and their seat belts. So we get the plane up, get this model up in the air, hop in the back of the truck, we're very comfortable, it's wind protected, and off we go. A lot of fun. In order to launch this plane, we launch on a winch. It's got a large tow hook underneath. I'll just pick this up so you can see the hook. Underneath here, this is the hook. Very large winch. That's hooked up to a winch that has a Ford starter motor as the pulley. The Ford starter motor has an accelerator. So the pilot's standing with the plane on the ground, typically, or being thrown, with a very long line that goes down to a pulley, back to the Ford starter motor. Press the accelerator, it's going to reel in that line really quickly, and the plane takes off like a glider up on a winch. At the top, the winch line slides off of that hook, and you're free to then go soaring. Typically, in an aircraft like this, I also have a variometer. So on board in the aircraft is a pitot tube that sticks out of the aircraft here. I didn't bring it, but it's a little tube that sticks out the top. And that provides an audio signal to my ear that tells me my rate of climb. Just as if I'm in a sailplane and I'm hearing a variometer going for climb or for sink. I'm getting that in my ear as we're driving in a truck down the road. So I know if the plane's in lift or not. And as soon as we hit a good thermal, stop the truck, stop the truck, stop the truck, I'm going to circle. And we circle and we climb up. And then when I'm at the top of my visibility, let's go. And off we go in speed mode. And typically we're doing something between 50 and 70 miles an hour in the truck on speed mode. And then we stop again and keep iterating that process. So it's a lot of fun to do this. I generally, when we're out in the middle of nowhere, like in California Valley, which is in Central California near San Luis Obispo, between Taft and San Luis Obispo, there's a lot of birds in that area, turkey vultures in particular, and they will follow along. They think this is the best thing ever. They just want to check it out, what's going on, and they'll fly right along with you, and it's so much fun. It's awesome. So I had the fortune, again, this is California Valley. If you're familiar with California, here's Santa Barbara, Bakersfield. California Valley is this area called the Carrizo Plain. It's a national monument. So part of the property is owned by the Bureau of Land Management. That's this Carrizo Plain National Monument. And it's also a very, very big open space grassland with one paved road down the middle of it, which is great. So thermaling on either side, you can land anywhere without hurting anything. So we have special permission from the Bureau of Land Management to fly model aircraft. At particular times, whenever we go out, we say we're coming, and they say, okay, great. We typically launch up at a place called California Valley, fly down here, and then back again along this road. And so with this plane, back in the 2000s, 2004 and 2005, I had the pleasure of setting 3 world records for goal and return. So this is a 20 kilometer out and back, 25 kilometer out and back, and a 40 kilometer out and back almost. The last one is about 26 miles, so almost like a marathon distance with a model sailplane. Last one, that took about 3 hours to do, of stopping the car, thermaling going, stopping the car, thermaling going, and on and on and on. Just 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine, John Elias in Nevada, increased that record to 60 kilometers, I think it is, or closer to 80, something on that order. I have to get the paperwork and find out for sure, in the middle of Nevada. So I just got extended. So that's the first one. I'm happy to have you take a look at this after the talk. Another record. So these categories change all the time, and they change relative to technology. So in about 2008, when autopilot systems started getting smaller and smaller and smaller, FAI got very interested in, I wonder if we could have a category for performance, not for human performance, but how well an autopilot could fly something as a model aircraft. I thought that was a little hokey, because I mean, really, it's, model airplanes are supposed to be for human pilot and stuff, not for, but if you're going to make the category, I'm going to enter it. We'll see what we can do. So I have a friend of mine who worked at Lucent Technologies, Bell Labs on the East Coast, a fantastic engineer, and I said, Lindsay, can you make an autopilot for me? Because in 2008, you couldn't go just buy a commercial autopilot. If you wanted to, it was like $10,000, and I'm not willing to put that much money in a model. He said, yeah, I can build something. So within a matter of a couple months, here comes this chip in the mail. That's this plug-in-your-receiver stuff, and it's going to control the rudder and pitch, but not pitch very well, mostly rudder. And the idea was every 1 second, it's going to update its GPS position, and you give it a particular location to fly to, so it knows what heading it's supposed to fly. But GPS is going to say, oh, you're wavering off this much, make your left turn, and it turns. And then it overcorrects, because it's on a 1 second refresh rate as a pilot, and it goes over here and says, oh, okay, I should make a right turn, and it's like this drunken sailor trying to get up to, up to its upstream, right? It's very, very tough, very challenging, but it's going in the right direction. Right? So we launched this, again, in California Valley. I launch it under human control. I flip the switch and let the autopilot take over, and then for landing, I flip the switch and I take over and land it. And the record is for the performance that the autopilot had. So it's always human override. If anything's going to go wrong, I still can get control again. It's not, it's on its own, have a good day, and we're just chasing it, if that's not what's happening. But on May 3rd, 2008, we launched this aircraft, that's me throwing it, and flipped the switch, and it flew successfully towards that goal for 31 minutes and 12 seconds, and it went 12 kilometers on its own. Granted, it's a very stable design. This actually was a design that came from one of the people here. This is Jeff Sensei, who was working with the Army and also NASA Ames. At Stanford as a PhD student, he was challenged. In the Stanford PhD students and also undergrads, they take these students through courses in building model aircraft and also building autonomous model aircraft. So part of the Stanford curriculum today is not only can you be a good aerospace scientist, but can you understand computing well enough to be able to program one of these autopilots to have a function. We're going to have a contest and see how well you can do. Part of your grade is how well you can do. And so Jeff had been taking that class just at the right time, and he had designed an aircraft that had even more dihedral than this for that particular contest. So it's already very statically stable. It's going to want to go straight. And we kind of copied that for that design. I made it bigger and made it work. I didn't bring that model in today. I did bring in a different model. So in 2017, I made this one. You have to come up with creative names for your aircraft. And I thought for a long time, I couldn't come up with a creative name for this thing. So my last name's Fogle, so this is the Fogleizer. You've been Fogelized, yeah? Okay, and the idea is for this aircraft, we wanted to set a record in a world-class competition for electric powered duration and distance. Realizing I did a lot of research on battery technology, realizing that the Tesla car has about the best density batteries that you can get for their weight, their lithium-ion batteries. I then had to go source where to get those lithium-ion batteries in the world because they're not easy to find. I found a source. We bought a lot of those batteries, very expensive. And then we built this plane around those batteries. So I already had this wing from a different model airplane. I already had the tail from a different model airplane. I needed to build the fuselage to fit the batteries, as many as we possibly could, to stay under the weight restriction that FAI had, and then put all that together and make it work. At the same time, as I was mentioned before, I teach at San Diego State. I wanted to involve the students. So I had one student in particular who was very good, help build the mold for this fuselage. in the wood shop, in the machine shop at San Diego State. So out of a place of Corian. Yeah, Corian built this whole mold, and then this is out of Kevlar in my garage in that mold. So it's 3-ply Kevlar on either side and then gluing the sides together around what would be. So we took this out to eastern Nevada, in a very, very, very remote part of eastern Nevada. Eastern Nevada, as you might know, has airspace issues because it's got restricted airspace. It's a different kind of airspace, right? And so we had to coordinate with Nellis Air Force Base before we launched this thing. We were on the phone with them the whole flight. And they're very interested. They're like, this is the coolest thing ever. Please have fun. And let us know when you're in and out of our airspace. No problem. Coordinated with Salt Lake City ATC for the other parts of the flight at the other end of the course, because the course is now getting long enough where you're flying at good distance. So in July of 2017, we went out to this eastern Nevada site, set up our truck. Here's the truck with the 2 seats and the plexiglass window. I sit in the back. My friend launched the plane, and we flew for 4 hours with this battery, 224 kilometers out and back, pre-specified where I would go to turn around, and landed successfully for a new world record. This is when I don't have the batteries with me. They're very high-powered batteries. Didn't feel like bringing them along. Little sticks of TNT. But you can kind of see this is in my garage before I put the 2 halves together, where the batteries sit in this fuselage. I can hold this up. This is actually very, very lightweight as a frame. It's like an eggshell, basically, around those batteries. When it's heavy, when it's loaded, it is very heavy. It's right up against the 5-kilogram limit for this category. And it takes a really, really, really good throw to get this to fly right, above stall when you're throwing it. In fact, you're launching it kind of in stall, and are hoping this propeller will take a hold and keep going.
Where do you get your batteries?
I sourced them actually out of Japan, but I had to make sure that they're exactly the right model that are in the Tesla, because China makes a lot of knockoffs that have the same labels, but they're not the right battery. So you have to get the right source to get the right battery. It's not
Japan and some countries in Eastern Europe.
Yeah. So I can, again, after the lecture, I'm happy to take you through the loading of batteries and things. This plane has, it's unusual for 2 reasons. It has 2 receivers. So just in case I'm up there, I'm flying, and one receiver happens to go bad, I've got a dual receiver that will take over and still control the plane. So I've got redundancy on my flight. I do not want to lose the plane. It also has a variometer on this pitot tube to tell me rate of climb. And on this pitot tube, it's got airspeed. So on my transmitter, I'm getting vertical climb, I'm getting airspeed, I'm getting battery voltage, I'm getting temperature of the motor, I'm getting RPM, I'm getting current draw to know I can calculate how much draw we're going to be taking right now and how far can we really go. So on the truck, as we're going down the course, this is the launch, by the way. This is my friend John. John's pretty tall. He's about 6'5", 6'4". He's throwing this plane as hard as he possibly can. And this is the first, we'd only flown this plane once before, just for one test flight. Then we took it out to Dubai. I didn't want to break it. We're going to go do this. And so here we are. We set up. It just rained. Let's just go. We're ready to go. John takes this plane. We're not watching anything. Throws it as hard as he can, and it's headed right for one of the signposts on the side of the road. I mean, right for the signpost. Couldn't be throwing it, and it cleared it by this much and keeps flying. It's like, you could just total it right away. Drive all the way to Nevada to throw the thing into a signpost. That would be all right. So
how do you control the charging of your batteries?
Yeah, very carefully.
I have a Tesla, and I know.
Yeah, so I have a charger that handles typical model airplane batteries, but we've got it specially rigged to handle these large cells and balance them as it charges. And I watch the charging as I'm charging them. I'm very careful about that because things can go wrong. And it's a lot of power. It's 14-volt packs. So things can go wrong.
What made you choose charging batteries? It seems to me that a non-charging battery may have more power density than a...
Awesome question. Great question. So if I can repeat it, why do rechargeable batteries when non-rechargeable batteries probably have more density or energy density per weight? Absolutely. That's a different record category. So this is the record category of rechargeable batteries, and only rechargeable batteries. There are other categories of combining rechargeable batteries with solar power to charge the batteries in flight to go further, or just solar power, no batteries. In fact, in the solar power category, you cannot use a battery to store any energy. It has to be direct solar to the motor,
Now, when you
which
say
is its own
solar,
category.
then how does the plane fly when it's not, there's no, where does this electricity go in a solar? It may go right to the motor.
It goes direct to the motor and direct to the receiver. So if you're flying solar and all of a sudden it's nighttime, I mean it's dark, getting dark, A, your motor's not going to work, and then B, pretty soon your receiver's not going to work, and your plane's going to be free flight and have fun. So, that's a whole different kind of record, different kind of thinking about what do I do for that kind of design. So this is me in the truck with my friend John. I've got extra battery pack on my transmitter because I don't know how long I'm going to fly. I've got my water tube to drink. We eat on the tube. I've got all sorts of fun. Not knowing how long these records are going to go, typically I wear Depends. It's a lot easier than stopping.
It's like a shuttle astronaut.
It's just like, we're going to do this. I don't tell the guys what I'm doing, but I'm doing, oh, that one didn't work out, but that's supposed to be a plane in the air. There it is. You can see it flying, yeah. So I typically, for this kind of a mission, it's not an altitude mission, I'm just flying. So I want to just maintain my altitude over the ground where I can see it. So we only got up to about 500 feet, 500 to 1,000 feet at most on the flight. Let's just go through this.
It's a gorgeous shot.
Just a second. That's the, I also have on board loggers that log the GPS location and the altitude and airspeed and RPM and all those kind of things over time. So I can graph any of that. So this is the course over time in the high desert of Nevada at 6,200 feet at launch. You can see my initial climb. The green line is the airplane, the road is the brown. And you can see that it's a mirror image. We went out this way and then we stopped and we went back again at the same distance and actually went faster going back than upwind. Typically, we orient the route so that we're flying upwind first, and then I'm flying with the tailwind back. In case my energy's getting low, I think I can make it with the tailwind.
Now those instruments are probably run off with a battery.
They
right?
do. They also cost current.
Sustaining power.
There's a penalty for these things. That's right. So I have to say, do I really need an RPM sensor? What's the current draw on that? Do the math and say, okay, here's the total energy density of this thing. I'm taking all this off over time. Can I make this distance or not? Yeah, just a second. Hang on. Hang on. Oh, we're going the wrong direction. This is a challenge. There we go. That's landing. Yes, question.
Was this an autopilot?
No, human piloted only.
Oh, okay.
No, so I should, thank you. I forgot to mention. I did that autopilot category. I'm so happy we got it. Because within maybe about 3 months afterwards, the FAI said, we reconsider our opinion. We're not going to have this category anymore. And they closed the category because they didn't want people running around with autopilots flying all over the place. It doesn't make sense. It's not human piloting like them. So they closed the category. So I've got the records forever. Okay, perfect. I like that. We're like, go get it now. This is after landing. You can see the air brake on the top of the wing. So there's a big spoiler here. This whole thing's a spoiler for air brakes. If I get up too high or something's going on, I can deploy that. This plane is coming down right away. Or on landing, I deploy it to make sure it's stuck on the ground. So that record is in eastern Nevada from a place called Major's Place down to Pioche and back up to Major's Place. It's a very desolate road. It's about the same equivalent distance as flying from the museum here to Disneyland and back, in the back of a pickup truck with a model airplane in the air. We ran into some crazy things along the way. We ran into I'm flying the plane. I am very focused on my flight. And the driver, my friend David Hall, says, Gary, we're going to stop the car. I'm like, well, what's up? He's like, well, there's cows all over the road ahead. Okay. We're stopping the car. So I start going into my orbit, and he's like, we're going to go. And I'm like, you just told me we're stopping. He's like, well, there's an opening between the cows. I'm like, okay, go. And we went one orbit, and off we go. And here's cows on either side. I'm like, oh my goodness. And okay, back flying again. Another one, we were driving along, we passed a covered wagon pulled by 6 donkeys. Just, okay, wow, that was interesting. What was that? Just, middle of Nevada. Anything happens out there. Fun stuff. Yeah. So, very fortunately for us, that record was selected by the National Aeronautic Association as one of the memorable flights of 2017. So I got to go back to Washington, D.C. to accept an award for that in last year, 2018. We went back again this last summer because when I landed after that record, we recharged the batteries because I wanted to see how much current was still remaining. And much to my happiness, half of the battery pack still remained. Wow. The math was wrong, but it was on the right way. So we're like, wow, okay. I had flown so much more efficiently than I thought was possible. We could have gone 300 kilometers, not just 220. So let's go back. So we went back this last summer to the same place. My friend John got to go first. On July 20th, he got to launch his model helicopter using the same batteries down here. Same team, but he flies these radio-controlled helicopters, and he wanted to do the distance record for helicopters. It was a very short distance, and we knew we could crush it with these batteries. So we went out there, did that. He flew for almost 55 kilometers, 1 hour flying a helicopter, which itself is rather difficult. If you've flown RC helicopters, flying them for more than just minutes is like very taxing. This is like, I'm going to go for an hour. It's really a lot of work. Full pitch, yeah. Yes, absolutely. It's all him. It's not, there's a, are you familiar with the V-bar?
No.
Okay, it's all him, and a specially designed blade for this kind of efficient long distance flight. And this is what it looks like when you're following in the car, the two pilots with a model helicopter up in the sky. Again, we're not going high up off the ground, we just want to go for distance. But it is, you get some strange looks from the cars coming at you. Because what are they doing? Okay, so that was fun. We went back to fly this plane again. Very exciting launch. John launched it again. This time, no signposts. We launched it down the road. But boy, it almost launches install. It is launching install. And it takes some time for it to kind of catch and go. And it got down to like, we're going to land again. And then finally, I'm going back up again and climbing. That was an interesting day. There was, unfortunately, a headwind on the first leg. So that's exactly opposite to what I want. So I was using far more current than I needed, or than I would care to. Got to the turnaround. And right at the turnaround, we noticed that there's a thunderstorm that's coming our direction, like down, the headwind we're working into at the hill. Now there's a thunderstorm that's going to follow us the whole way, and we turn around real quick, and I'm going, and now I'm using a lot of current just to stay ahead of this thunderstorm that's tracing us. And then we noticed up ahead is another thunderstorm that had built right up the end of the road. So there's no way I'm going to complete the flight, and we decided to abort the flight and land on the highway when there's no traffic, and put it all away. Good thing we did, because then it started raining like cats and dogs. So, sometimes you get out there, you do all this effort, and you go there, and the weather makes it not happen. That's the way it is. But fortunately, my friend John got his record. Yeah, question?
Oh, is there any advantage to variable pitch for your?
Great question. So for this, absolutely, there would be an advantage to having a variable pitch prop. I have looked into that. There are servo-derived mechanisms for doing that on model aircraft. It's additional weight. And it's a special kind of motor that has that axle through the center that can do so the cost of the motor plus the additional weight, I just decided not to go that direction. This does have a folding prop, so this can fold back and forth. So if I'm I'm flying along, if I get into a thermal, I know from my sensor that I'm climbing. I will cut back on the throttle. I've even completely killed the throttle. This will fold, makes it more efficient as a glider. Now I can circle and do thermaling, get my altitude for free, and then go on with the motor. And as soon as I put that motor back on, that springs out automatically. Yeah.
Are you able to go up against the slope and take advantage of the lift?
You can, if there's slopes.
I just noticed in Nevada, there's lots of north and south valleys, mountain range on both sides.
Exactly, yes, this is what we're doing. And sometimes the roads get close enough to a side where you can kind of get a little bit of that, but typically it's a lot of thermal lift off the side of that mountain that you get into, and you stay and you don't have to use any throttle at all. You can just go for miles without any throttle.
Doug?
Sure, yeah.
You mentioned the work you had to do with the ATC to get clearances to fly in that. Are you having any day-to-day problems with the FAA with regards to drone flights?
Absolutely. So let me finish this and we'll get back to that question. That's a great question. And by the way, before you leave, I'm happy to have you feel the weight of this plane, and we'll take the wing apart and feel how light this is. This is all carbon Kevlar stripped balsa. So the ribs are balsa, the carbon caps on each top and bottom. This is carbon Kevlar weave for very strong D-tube. And again, the rest of it's Kevlar. So to think about this. So I've done now 12 world records and 54 national records. I've been through a lot of paperwork since 1995 to do this. I think it's a lot of fun because I look at these as challenges. Just like Richard Branson would look at it, or Paul Allen would look at a challenge and say, I'm going to make a big straddle launcher. It's a new type of challenge. It's just on small scale. And it is pushing the envelope of what you can do with batteries or what you can do with motors to advance the technology. And some of that technology ends up getting transferred to the manned aviation as well. But that does require considerable time and effort and expense, and you got to make sure it's all safe. I'm the one in the back of the pickup truck. You're taking a risk. That's the part of the adventure. And again, back to your comment, despite what FAA might think, it's possible to do these kind of crazy things, but do them very safely and do them with management, with manned aircraft to make sure that they know we're around and we know they're around, and do them in appropriate locations, not downtown San Diego.
I see no ailerons on this airplane.
There's no ailerons. Again, saving weight. So it's all rudder elevator only, throttle and spoiler for getting down if I need it. I didn't want to add more weight in service.
So if it gets tipped?
Don't let it get tipped. I can get out of it. I've got a full, the rudder throw is plenty to be able to get this out. I can get into a thermal trinket. Your question in the back?
Do you have a dethermalizer on the wing?
Yeah, spoiler.
In case you hit a thermal?
Yes.
What does happen?
If this will pop up and I'll be able to come down right away because I'm taking this much of the area of the wing away.
You never mentioned it before.
Yeah, it's going to come down. Unfortunately, again, I got this wing from a previous model. Unfortunately, this spoiler, very effective, but it also blanks out the control of the rudder and the elevator. Poorly designed. So I'd rather have it be outboard on your panel. And the newer models of this model do have that. So this is an old wing, but I had it, so it's very useful for this particular record. Last question. Last thing, just a second. I've got to acknowledge several people. One, my team. So I've got friends. Gentleman who was the driver of my truck every time, retired American Airlines Captain David Hall up in New Kaipa. I've got 2 people out of NASA up at Moffett Ames that come join us for these activities. My friend John, who's a helicopter aficionado down here in town. So I've got a group of about 6 guys. Between our schedules, we can do this once a year for world records and go drive to wherever. It's coordination with those groups, it's coordination with manned aircraft, and I love the fact that Nevada keeps its gas prices low. If I wanted to do this in California, it's tough. And then lastly, I just want to say, as I teach this class at San Diego State, I've done this now 5 years. My class is 175 to 180 students. It's the freshman class for aerospace engineering. They all have to take my class. Some students come in with a lot of aerospace knowledge. They've done model airplanes before, they're into it. Others, they don't even know if they want to do aerospace. They're just there to see if it's for them. And I say to them the first day of class every year, if you figure out that aerospace isn't for you, I'm just as happy as if you found out that aerospace is for you. This is the class you decide. Because don't waste your whole life, figure out 4 years later that this isn't the major for you. I want you to be passionate about aerospace after having left this class, or not. Right? And so as a part of that class, I bring in these model airplanes. Every course I teach, I bring in a model airplane. I say, here's the record category, here's the design constraints, here's why we made these choices. How do we do it better next time? What do you think? And have them engage in the process of design and constraints about the design. And then as a part of their class, I have them break into teams of 4 to 5, and they have to compete. So they build their own little free flight model airplanes, rubber band powered. They can either do duration or distance, their choice. They can either build a kit or they can build things scratch. If they build it out of scratch, they get more points. And then we all get on the field, the softball field at San Diego State on a Thursday afternoon. And we do this in an iterative duration first, then distance, duration, distance. And they compete against each other. Part of their grade is how well they do in that contest. And boy, oh boy, did they take it seriously. It's good. But it's really teaching them like firsthand. Some of these students have never built anything in their life because everything these days comes pre-built. So they look at a model like this and say, you built this? How did you build this? I don't even understand. They don't get it. So getting to actually physically take a kit and make something is part of my drive. I do that through the model. So happy to answer any questions, happy to hold these up and have you take a look at them. Yeah.
Input from your students that you incorporate into your work?
My first year teaching, there was one outstanding student. He's the one 4 years later who made the mold for this plane. So I keep them engaged. I get them into model aviation. I get them keeping him. He's now working for Northrop Grumman. So there are some success stories. I have to say that that's a small percentage. But this is the way, this is life. So sometimes people figure out this isn't for them. And I'm okay, yeah.
It's a great tool for aerial archaeology and aerial
Yes.
Do you do any of that?
I do not. So I did a little bit of work with cameras on the planes back in the 1990s. I was really good friends with Dr. Paul McCready of the Gossamer Condor and Gossamer Albatross. He and I teamed up. He and my dad knew each other when I was a kid. Teamed up to put small video cameras on RC planes in the late 90s. He wanted a specific purpose of doing that to take pictures of birds in flight from model airplanes and getting really up close to a seagull and what does it look like? So we did that up in Malibu with these very expensive, nice video cameras from DARPA on my model airplanes. And I gotta say, it's very interesting. So we've got this camera forward mounted on my model glider, and we've got a video screen that's down here that's showing what's going on. I thought that was totally cool back in 1990s. That was amazing. And you find a pelican or a seagull and you try to sneak up behind it. They do not like that. They just go flat out, what's this? and trying to get me, it's just not gonna happen. So Paul and I were like, how do we get this to work? Because we still want to take pictures. Sometimes we notice that the birds will commonly fly alongside me. I mean, that's just a common thing. Almost every weekend I'm flying with a bird that's interested in what I'm doing. So they'll come up alongside. So we then changed our perspective. We put the camera backward facing on a turret, kind of like a TBM Avenger. Right? So now I'm flying the plane forward looking, and I've got a friend of mine who's looking in the backward turret to try to orient the camera to take a picture of a bird that might be flying along the wing. And you're doing that in 3 dimensions, but we got some good pictures of like seagull face looking at us, that kind of stuff, kind of fun. But it's really difficult, very difficult. And then I had the brilliant mind one day to try to fly the plane through the backward-looking turret. Bad experience. Nearly got sick in about 2 minutes. That was bad. And then the other thing, I have not really, after that experience, I have not really caught on to the current technology of the camera thing. It's just not my thing. I know people that do that love that. My sport is just, can I fly? How far can I fly? How high can I fly? How can I push my own limits that might be better than anyone else? And no cameras.
So
That's just my own thing.
where do you build it and how long?
I built this in my garage. The building of the fuselage probably took about 3 months of late night, half hour at night, an hour a night kind of work. The wing again came from a different model. This wing was made in Ukraine. It comes out of a kit in the Ukraine, and it's all again. I'll pass this around so you can take a look at the feel the weight of that. The covering is a special kind of covering. It's an iron-on covering, and this is
Seekonite?
Say that again.
Is it a Seekonite?
I don't know. It's a Seekonite. It's what's called Econocoat or Ultra Coat.
You get it very different layers.
This is a very thin iron-on film, and it heats up and shrinks and sticks to the carbon fiber. And it's fluorescent so that I can see it better. If you notice on the other pictures, I had it all yellow, and it was not fluorescent. And so if I got up high, actually this plane would kind of disappear, and all I'd see was the skeleton of this D-tube, which was not enough for me to really be comfortable. So I changed the coloring to be fluorescent red, so it really would pop. Question?
So when did your PhD was in biology?
Yes.
When did you morph from biology into aerospace?
Great question. So very, very fortunately for me, I have a fortunate life. I grew up in La Jolla. My dad was an aerospace engineer out of Condor. In the 1960s, he developed the cockpit display for the F-102 and the F-106. Also was head of reliability on the Atlas program. Also was the inventor of the noise-canceling headphone, previous to his time at Condor. Bose waited for those patents to expire before making headphones, so my dad didn't see any royalties out of that at all, so it is. But my dad then got into machine learning and computer science, became a father of a particular type of machine learning, and is very famous in computer science. When I was growing up, he and I would be flying model airplanes at the Torrey Pines Glider Port on the weekends. It was what father-son did. And so I soloed with model airplanes when I was 9 up there, 1977, just for fun. That's what I grew up with. It felt very normal. And I've done model airplanes my whole life. I went into biology specifically as a teenager, not wanting to do what my dad was doing. Sometimes teenagers are like that. I was interested in paleontology. I got into biology. And then realized as my PhD was finishing that computer science and biology was kind of coming together. And so then I went right back into machine learning, what my father was doing, working at the company my dad had started, and now I'm running that company. So it's all full circle for me. So just very fortunate for me, yeah.
I'm really interested in birds.
Yeah.
Are these large, has any bird gotten aggressive?
Oh, yes.
Because out at Midway, we had a celebration of life service last October.
Yes.
And some jerk from next door in the park kept trying to get up close to the Midway with his drone.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a seagull sitting on and every time he'd come, this gull went after that thing.
Good, smart
and
seagull.
It was so aggressive that the guy finally said, oh, screw it.
Smart
and
seagull,
he
yeah.
left us alone in our private service.
Yeah.
And I wondered if...
Yeah, they do come along. It depends on the time of year and what they're doing, and if you're close to one of their nests or not. And typically, if they're getting aggressive, we bug out. We get the signal. I'm very happy to be like a bird, so I don't want to make them angry. But there are some times where they grab. They won't grab something like this, but they will grab something like that, and you'll get a claw mark in your thing. The drone stuff. So again, I'm a lead member and fellow of the Academy of Model Aeronautics. For a long time, I was working with the AMA. Helping AMA help FAA figure out how to incorporate drones and model aircraft into airspace in a reasonable way, rather than in a totalitarian way. FAA is FAA. One way of incorporating something is to regulate it out of existence. That's tough. I would love to have recreational model aircraft still be available, but people do crazy things with drones. People fly at the end of Lindbergh Field with a drone. So there's got to be some kind of rules that say that's not cool, and you can go to jail for that kind of thing, and I'm all for that. Because there are a whole group of people that do fly responsibly and do fly the right way, and do want to interact with manned aircraft and birds in the right way, and should still do those things because we've done those things correctly for the last 60 years without being a problem. So we're still trying to work with FAA to make FAA understand that kind of thinking. FAA doesn't necessarily understand that way of thinking. Question?
Have you done many models with power?
Yeah, so generally I do soaring, generally. Electric power is about all I do when it comes to motors, and I'm using them mainly to launch and then turn them off. So this is unusual for me. Usually I'm not having them all the time.
I saw this guy with a big scale model of the B-29, and he has an X1 attached to it.
Oh.
And he flies up and he drops the
Absolutely.
X1, and then
It's got a rocket. Yeah, the X1's got a rocket on it.
It's a rocket or
It's a rocket. They have a rocket on it. Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome. Yeah, comes down as a glider. It's just that. Yeah.
Yeah, can you speak to the speed records for electric and?
Sure. So interestingly, the speed records for model aircraft are all owned by model sailplanes. There's a technique called dynamic soaring, where on a ridge, if the wind's hitting the ridge and going up, it creates an inverted waterfall of lift you can use to soar. But that air goes up and over the ridge. And if the ridge is shaped like a bell, on this back side of the ridge, there's no wind at all. It's like a calm zone. And some creative pilots have figured out that if you have a certain pattern where you fly a looping pattern behind the hill and then into this stream and then out of the stream and into the stream, you actually gain energy by doing this loop over and over again. Each pass you gain energy. And so I think the current record for speed is something like 400 miles an hour, 420 miles an hour with a model sailplane. It's going so fast it's hard to know what it's doing at that point.
Yeah.
And so again, there's turbine powered model aircraft. You stick a big turbine in there for $2,000 and go blast your F-16 around for a while and come down and land. Not my thing. Very expensive, but also very fast. Speed is just not my thing, except for when I'm going between thermals. That's just for me. But go ahead. Yeah, you had a question. Yeah,
I was just going to say there's a very good video of that.
Dynamic soaring. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
It's scary fast.
It's very fast.
When they say it's 400 miles an hour, you believe it.
Yeah. It's radar gun, and it's going quick. It's a little different than the dynamic soaring that an albatross would do. It's the same kind of principle of trying to make a pattern with a gradient. This is a very, very strong wind gradient on the backside of a mountain, but no one, as far as I know, has done true dynamic soaring, going out to the ocean and being an albatross and trying to do that kind of soaring. That would be fun. But of course, you're going to land in the water. Maybe that's not a good day. Yeah, other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed, I saw when I was researching your bio, you're published in a lot of biology and computer science. Are you published in aerodynamic journals at all?
Not a lot, no. I stick to aviation history since my degrees aren't in aerospace. So yeah, no, aviation history is where it's at for me. Yeah.
Well, I can see where your practical experience is the equal of other people's sitting in the classroom.
Yeah, it's fun. Last question, yeah.
Yes, would you care to speak to what your company is up to?
Sure. So our company has been in business for 25 years. We're a small, privately held company in Sorrento Mesa. The idea is to use really, really smart computers, machine learning, to help solve some pretty huge problems, both in biology. So I come from biology, so for diagnostics for cancer, or for HIV, or for other types of diseases, but also for homeland security. So for instance, modeling terrorist intent or terrorist behavior, or for path planning on unmanned systems. So think about an aircraft, like a drone, like a real-sized Northrop Grumman type drone, with an algorithm that could learn what's the right path to fly on its own, with no need to communicate to a human. Just give me the mission and it figures out what the right path would be. Or working in finance, so predicting stock markets, or any kind of optimization, that kind of thing. So that's what we do. It's very broad scale machine learning, so I work on lots of problems across the board, which is a lot of fun. It's very difficult to remain focused when you're that diverse and you still want to play with model airplanes on the weekends, but I do my best.
Now I know why you go out to Nevada.
Yes, I get away from it all.
And you do the analysis.
There you go.
You ever work with AeroVironment?
I did have the chance of working with Paul directly with AeroVironment before he passed. Yeah, great company.
One of the things I want to mention too, Gary, I'm going to toot your horn just a little bit. For those of you who enjoy the Montgomery exhibit downstairs, Gary was instrumental in creating that exhibit. He helped all the way along the way, provided so much talent, information, artifacts, and everything else.
Thanks, Terry. Well, Katrina and Terry were instrumental in that too. So anyway.
Well, Doctor,
thank you.
That was one of the most interesting lectures we've had.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Please come on and take a picture.